Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Constantine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about epistemic humility and how to write about it in APA style, particularly with deep reflection, where you might be drawing on things like personal histories and experiences. We're going to be looking at this particularly through the lens of an assignment from the core program, from Core 115. We're getting close to the end of the semester, so we'll gloss through our normal introductory stuff about Writing Center services, and I'll just point out that we have on our Writing Webinars page, if you scroll down, the second section has a sorted course catalog where you can find all of the webinars that we currently have that tie in with a specific program and courses in that program. With that, let us dive in and look at this assignment. So the assignment that's a catalyst for our discussion today is Core 115's Week 7 Assignment 1, the Spiritual Reflection Paper on Epistemic Humility. After that, we'll talk about some of the key tenets of the epistemic humility, some common reflection strategies, and how to put these all together in outlining and drafting. So let's talk about this assignment. So this is coming from Introduction to Critical Thinking, where a variety of assignments have asked you to not only articulate your own personal views and reflect on how you came to them, but to put yourself in other people's shoes and imagine their viewpoints, what arguments they would make, and how you would resolve or approach the conflicts that might arise between these different things. And this assignment description begins with a preamble about the overall purpose of this. The purpose of this reflection is to gain a deeper sense of understanding and compassion for the ways that other people think. We hope that you will gain an appreciation for difference and for the common goals that you share with those who may disagree with you. You are doing this assignment to reflect upon one of the important goals of this course: empathy and tolerance for others. So you can see that this is a culminating assignment in many ways, because after taking other people's viewpoints and looking at why we believe the things we do, how we support our own arguments, and understanding that other people may have different reasons than ours that are valid reasons, that are important reasons, and yet come to a different conclusion than we have. And that is a very interesting thing to acknowledge when approaching the world, and something that is at the heart of this assignment. So the formal instructions begin this way. You have noticed by now that we've asked you to argue with your classmates, and they have been prompted to argue with you. We hope there have been times where you felt challenged to consider not just whether someone else was right, but how someone else might be right. Dr. Rees calls this awareness to the possibility that we might not have everything right epistemic humility. So this is a quick recap of the key concept, and then a specific instruction. Think about a way in which you felt challenged to think or know in a way that made you uncomfortable. In this reflection, we want for you to go beyond the actual feeling and explore why you felt that way. Why do people sometimes feel angry when their views are challenged? Why do individuals sometimes react defensively, or shout or cry when someone asserts a view different from theirs? Why are people willing to kill over religion or politics or science? Think about some of your own reactions and hypothesize about the reasons that epistemic humility is so painful. And then the parameters, so write this in 600 to 800 words, which is a little bit over 2 to a little bit over 3 double-spaced pages of body text. You don't have to use any outside resources for this. This can be purely a reflection. It's supposed to be spiritual, so not just looking to yourself, but thinking about the hearts and minds of other people and seeing what reasons, not just you, but other people may find it painful when someone tells you that you're wrong. And then if we look at the rubric for this assignment, we find that these are enumerated in 3 major points. If you clearly identified and articulated ways in which you felt challenged to think or know in ways that made you uncomfortable. Has someone explored and reflected by the emotional experience? Explored and reflected beyond the emotional experience. So don't just tell us what your reaction was, but okay, What do you understand about where that came from? And have you reflected on the larger question of why epistemic humility is so painful? So we have the division of the paper into 3 broad parts with an introduction and conclusion, of course. Now, we're going to come back to that assignment, but let's talk a little bit about epistemic humility, because this is a term that is used in many ways to refer to different things. But broadly speaking, we can understand it as epistemic humility refers to an array of different ways of understanding, acknowledging, and accepting the limits of understanding due to our own limitations. One very broad example, there is simply no way for one person to know everything in the world. There's a limit of time, there's a limit of our memory, limit of our attention and our interests. And acknowledging that comes with many things, including acknowledging that other people may be better at us than we ourselves are, even if that's a major part of our identity, to be very talented, smart, accomplished, what have you. So look at a couple contexts. So how epistemic humility is used in the philosophy of science. It's basically saying our knowledge of the world, how we understand how the world works, is affected by our status as an observer, including how we interpret it, structure it, and filter it. Might use an example if you use vision correction, such as eyeglasses or contact lenses, or using an observation device like a microscope or a telescope. These are all things that make different details more visible. So, for example, if you are wearing reading glasses, these make things close to you more clear and visible. If you're wearing lenses designed to correct short-sightedness that let you see further, you'll see many details, but they won't necessarily be all as crisp as when you have those reading glasses on and you're reading a book that is exactly as far from your face as those glasses are designed to do. Now, this also means that if you're making a scientific statement, like this is this other thing, or this is this type, or it's related to it in this way, that we should acknowledge that we have limited observations of the world and thus a limited ability to understand it. A common example is to talk about the subatomic models that are usually taught in high school and university. Yes, the idea of electrons rotating the nucleus of the atom is kind of correct, but it is a simplification. One of the things that you often learn going from high school chemistry and physics to the university level is that, well, electrons don't move in neat orbitals that just go in a two-dimensional plane. They can go all around in a cloud. And it's the kind of thing where acknowledging that we only have a limited capacity to view and understand and explain these, and that it may be helpful to make simplifications, or we may be, whether we want it or not, simplifying things because that's the best we can see or discern. That acknowledging that is an important way of being able to advance our understanding, to say, okay, here's what we see based on what we have now. Now, you can also approach this term through the philosophy of life, in which case epistemic humility entails things like, being humble about your assumptions about what you know, not assuming that you know everything or that things are always absolutes. Recognizing that your understanding of the world is incomplete. Understanding that others' views may be well-grounded and different from our own well-grounded views. Another way to understand this is by distilling it into tenets, like acknowledging the limits of our personal knowledge, or our knowledge as part of a group, is a precursor to intellectual and other growth. If we assume we know everything, if we insist we know everything, it's hard to progress. And if we refuse to acknowledge that things may be more complex or nuanced than we imagine them, then it's not a lot of room for growth. Also understanding that understanding itself and perspective are subject to change. People don't always believe the same things or understand things the same way. Often they become more complex and nuanced over time. And because of these things, it is better to proceed through life with humility and without pretension or presumption that things must be some way or that we must have a complete understanding already. Also, that disagreements are not always intractable cases of right and wrong where one side must rule out or they must acknowledge that your view is superior. Now, in terms of how these might come up, well, let's review some common reflection strategies, starting with the question of why are we reflecting on this? And reflection comes up in many things, including how we learn from our experiences. Well, it happens that the sample assignment that we're talking is asking you to reflect on an experience of epistemic humility and talk about what you have learned from that. So this is definitely relevant. To do things like show what and indeed that you've learned from the experience. In some cases you would be relating this to the literature, but in this case we're not actually required for this assignment. But to reimagine findings and experience toward the future, how have these things shaped you? Yes, that's absolutely within the scope of this assignment. You can also approach this more generally as reflection allows people to make sense of material or experiences in relation to themselves, others, and the conditions that shaped the experience or material, and that look at this towards how improving things for the future. Now, there are some common reflection strategies, including describing the event or artifact being reflected on, and that is actually something that this assignment asks you to do. To contextualize it with the literature or other experiences, with the course objectives, and that's a good point to look back at the preamble about this empathy and ask specifically, okay, has this changed? How do you think about other people's views? What changed? What was before the reflection? And what's coming now? What has changed? And why is that important to you? So at this point, it'd be helpful to grab a copy of the APA course paper template. If you're watching this on video, go ahead and pause, and we'll resume from there. Now, I have here a copy of the APA course paper template, and you can fill in your name and the name of the assignment here. Just make sure that whatever you put in for the assignment title matches that on the first page of the body. Now we're going to start by copying and pasting some of the assignment instructions here. So I've gone ahead and pasted the instructions for this assignment here. And we're going to start out by pruning out some things. Like this instruction, you do not need to use any outside resources. Okay, we don't need to be looking at that all the time, so I'm just going to delete that. The length, 600, 800 words, you can check that at the end, take that out here. And so we have here this main prompt, think about this way, and then some details. Okay, explore why you felt that, including these specific prompts, and this instruction to think about your own reactions. And here we have an instruction. Identify some of the reasons it can be so painful when someone tells us we're wrong. Now, to help with us distinguishing these instructions from the text you might write, I'm going to go ahead and italicize that. And look at this and see, okay, so we have a way in which you felt challenged to think. Now, this could be coming from a longer-term thing, or it could be a specific incident. And I'm going to start out here at describing it as an incident. And we'll say this is a talk with a friend. We'll call this friend Jacques. And the details, we're just doing an illustration here. But we want to have a specific incident that you tell the reader what happened, what the stakes were, how this challenged, how did you feel about it? So in this hypothetical situation, we'll say Jacques, who is he? We'll say my roommate, Jacques, said that he did not want to live together. And the reasons are, not important to this particular example, but let's say that he said that you were a terrible pricker. Now, let's make this personal, because this is supposed to be a reflection, so it's not about some other you, this is about me. So, I was me. And, okay, how do they feel? Now, if you're writing about this, so what's the incident? What happened? How did you feel about it? And why? Why did you feel that way? So in this example here, so we have the incident. Roommate Jacques says as he doesn't want to live together anymore because I'm a terrible person and he doesn't want to live with me as a result. The reaction, okay, felt angry, upset, and that Jacques was wrong and misguided. And even asked if he had changed his medications recently, which is probably not going to help this not wanting to live together bit. And then the explanation, okay, why did why did I feel this way? Because it was deeply personal. He challenged a sense of worth and self-image as a good person. And expand on this. And so this is reflecting on yourself. Now the next step, okay, let's take this to other people. Alright, that's one reason that I, in this example, felt that way. What about that? Now, how do other people do this? How did Jacques, in this example, react when I said, well, hold on, is this you or is it your meds talking? Probably felt angry because it was implying that he wasn't in possession of all his mental faculties. Now here, okay, react defensively, shout, cry. These are all different reactions that you can explore here. And we'll take this cry. Well, for some people, crying is the ultimate shutting down the discussion, saying, you've hurt me, this is your fault. Now, that's not the only reason that people cry, and it's not necessarily a conscious reason that they do, but we are talking about your reflection on this, so whatever your understanding of that is. Or you could say, okay, I have several different understandings. Sometimes it's, and whatever it is, to take these instructions and use them as a guide for expanding these points and making sure that you come back to this. So it's not just taking apart the initial incident, talking about people in general, but coming back and see, okay, so based on these, what are some of the reasons that you understand that it can be so painful when someone tells us that we're wrong? And what does that lead you to do? Very briefly speaking about myself, I would say that it's rarely a comfortable thing when you find that you have done something that other people do not view nearly as positively as you do. And whether we're talking in the bounds of a relationship or child rearing or anything else, that is something where one of the thing can make it so sharp a pain is that we have been working towards a specific goal, and then we're essentially being told, yeah, you're not hitting that goal, and even worse, you're doing this other thing. And that's many things, and easy to bear is not one of them for most people. So that's the kinds of things to react here, and that epistemic humility, so much of this is acknowledging that, oh, the way that we view things, or we initially view things, is not necessarily where other people are. Whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, professionally, or something else. And acknowledging that other people have other viewpoints that are important to you as well, that's an interesting reflection, an interesting insight to come out of it. So, with that, let us do a quick recap of where we were. So, we looked at Core 115's Week 7 Assignment 1, the Spiritual Reflection Paper on Epistemic Humility. We reviewed some of the key tenets of epistemic humility and ways that it manifests in different disciplines. We talked about different reflection strategies, and we finished by talking about how the assignment instructions serve as a foundation for building up a set of notes for writing your eventual paper. That concludes our presentation for today. If you have any questions, feel free to send an email to onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu to schedule an appointment on WC Online. Visit the Online Writing Center website for links to other videos, templates, guides, and other resources. And with that, bid you a great end to the semester.